Hello, everyone. Maybe not. Okay. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us now. We'll be starting in literally 10 seconds. I just need to open up my voice recorder. All right. Should be ready to go.
A few more seconds. For some reason, you're kind of loud again. I gotta change.
Do you want me to whisper?
No, it's fine. Let me turn down the volume a little bit. Okay, shrink that. Get that on there. To notes. All right, let me send out the tweet. Tweet is a go. My tweet is a go. Closing out that. Oh boy. Okay. I am now recording.
I am now recording as well.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central podcast, episode 230 for June 18th, 2021. Hey everyone, Daniel Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows 11 Central podcast. Yes, a lot has maybe happened this week. I don't know. All of us got derailed in our news coverage, and we'll be focusing pretty much covering Windows 11, some more Windows 11 with a dash of Windows 11. And then Zach's also going to tell us a little bit about what we didn't see in Windows 11 this week. And then something about Xbox. Apparently there's
Nobody cares about Xbox, Dan.
Not on this podcast. But there was also some other cool stuff happened. I got, Razer announced a brand new Blade 14 laptop with AMD, and I actually have it here, which is kind of cool. And I actually got the Samsung Galaxy Book Go, the $350 Windows 10 PC with a Qualcomm Snapdragon 7C Gen 2. Deep breath.
Wow.
And I'll just talk about that stuff briefly, kind of what I think about them and everything like that. But that'll be towards the end of the podcast, so don't worry, we won't bore you if you tuned in just for all the Windows 11 stuff. Zach, how are you doing on this? What turned out to be a very busy week for us.
I'm very tired, but also very excited because a few things were confirmed this week, albeit not to Microsoft's control. We've been talking a little while now about the idea of a Windows 11.
Yeah, it says they're back now.
Okay. I don't know what happened there. Sorry about that. Should we just start again? We were only 2 minutes in.
Do I have to do the clap again?
Yeah. Oh, but we don't have to start. If you want to just go from how are you doing, I guess we could.
All right.
Cool.
That happened before, by the way, where I was waiting for you.
So. Yeah, I said it with that. I don't know why it happened that time. That was weird.
Okay.
Hopefully it doesn't happen again.
All right. All right. From the top, Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday where we ended up having a very busy week and all our planned content got derailed?
Yeah, I'm very tired. So this week, if you were living under a rock, Windows 11 leaked. Kind of. A near final build of Windows 11 leaks, although technically also not true. We'll get into why that's not true in a second. But you may remember maybe a month or so ago, we were talking about the possibility of a Windows 11 and what if Microsoft called Sun Valley Windows 11. Turns out that's exactly what they were doing, and all I want to say is, I told you so. That's how I'll open the show today.
I just want to state this sometimes. Like, there is a segment of our core audience that reads between the lines sometimes when we write stuff, and they're like, oh, there may be something to this. And then there's the other part that, like, I don't think we could have been more obvious, and they still went over their head. But yeah, I mean, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes we are legitimately speculating or we're wishing or we would like Microsoft to do something. Well, a lot of times when we write these kind of stories, it's kind of like a wink and a nod. And, you wrote this over a month ago.
Yes.
And we started, spinning the wheels on a Windows 11.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we could talk a bit about this now. I've known about Windows 11 for, I think, maybe a month and a half, maybe 2 months. But when we got the information, we were we couldn't write about it for a number of different reasons that I may be able to get into one day, but not today. So what we came up with is, because we wanted to talk about this, we wanted to get the community's thoughts, because, when we write about stuff as a report, that generates discussion regardless. We still wanted to have that discussion, so I decided to write it up as an opinion piece. What if they called it Windows 11? Here's why I think that would be a good idea. And that worked, in our comments set. That was one of a very popular article. Lots of people commented on it. People were talking about it on Twitter. So that worked, and people were talking about it without us spoiling the surprise. But somebody else spoiled it anyway by leaking an entire build of Windows 11. So I guess that's what we're going to talk about today. It's super interesting because this build basically confirms everything we've been talking about since October. The fact that Sun Valley exists and Microsoft is working on a significant user experience rejuvenation of the Windows desktop. That is confirmed with this build. We have a new start menu, a new taskbar, rounded corners on app windows, a new setup experience, new sounds, new iconography, new snapping features. There's lots in this build, but it's also not everything. I've seen a lot of people looking at this build and judging it as if it's basically final, which is so far from the truth. It's difficult. It's hard to describe because Microsoft has built this version of Windows very differently. The core of the operating system, the platform, is technically done, and that is basically near final. Build 21996, which leaked, is only 4 builds away from the air quotes RTM build for this release. But Microsoft has undocked the UX with this release, so they can continue working on it and updating it independently. So even though we have a final build at 22,000, the UX isn't done and likely won't be done until September. So what you're seeing in this build is a slice, if you will, maybe a third of the pie. There's still plenty more that you haven't seen. So I feel like if those of you who are judging this or thinking this is it for Windows 11, I wouldn't put money on that just yet.
Yeah, this this build, as you already mentioned, it's unfortunate. It did ruin some of the surprise for June.
It did. It ruined the name. It ruined the fact that there's a centered UI and stuff now. But yeah,
right. Yeah, and it's really unfortunate. I was hoping, there's two sides to this. I was hoping to tune into June 24th and have that really big reveal moment, just as Microsoft was originally planning. That said, and as you already hinted, there's actually a lot here that's not here. So yeah. I'm still very excited about tuning into June 24th because there's stuff. Well, I wrote in an article this week about that. There's stuff we know that's not here. Mm-hmm. So there is known unknowns. No, there's known unknown knowns. How's this go? Unknown knowns, but there's also unknown unknowns. So there's a lot of stuff we don't know about Windows 11 that we know we don't know about. And for instance, there's nothing we have speculated on about, say, the store. We know there's a new store coming, like a whole new experience. But what does that mean? Is it just a facelift, or is it really going to be the core delivery system, which has sort of been the real issue behind the story? It takes a long time when you hit a button to see the results. Sometimes downloads get screwed up. You get errors. Is that stuff tweaked, right? The plumbing of the store besides the thing. Then there's also, what about developers? We are expecting a shift in revenue cuts like that Microsoft has already done for games and stuff like that, and for the store too, and a new kind of app model. What about new app types in the store and more lenient, what can be submitted in there? There's a lot of stuff and that's just a store we're talking about. Look at Windows 11 itself. Okay, new UI and stuff like that. What about the underhood optimizations? We're about to publish a story talking about how this shouldn't be surprising, but Windows 11 is a lot lighter and faster. There was a YouTuber who benchmarked the difference between Windows 10 and Windows 11, and it's like a 13 to 15% improvement in performance with Windows 11. And to put that in more realistic terms, even just the boot time drops from 16 seconds to 13 seconds. SSD speeds increased, Geekbench score increased. So there's a lot of this sort of optimization to the operating system that's going to, which follows to what we were expecting with Windows 10X, right? This idea of a lighter, more nimbler version of the operating system that will improve performance across the hardware. And we haven't even touched upon gaming. There's auto HDR is known to be coming, and feature, what about gaming? What optimizations are there for that? What new features, if any? We don't know. And so you combine all this stuff, there's still a ton that needs to be revealed on Windows 11. You know, we know there are other features, and maybe you want to go through the list of things we have documented already that we know is
Yes.
new, that you've already covered in your walkthrough video.
So yes, the things that are in this build that are basically confirmed to be shipping as part of Windows 11 includes the a new start menu design, which is similar but not identical to the 10x start menu. It still has its live tiles are gone. It has like a grid of icons that you can pin and stuff. Below that is your recent/recommended, which shows you your most recent documents in Office and recently installed apps and stuff. There's an apps list as well and whatnot. But yeah, the big thing about that is that live tiles are gone and the design is now centered by default. So the start button and your pinned apps are all centered in the middle of the taskbar, which is, again, like I said, we've sort of talked about this before. This shouldn't be surprising if you've listened to previous episodes of this podcast. In addition to that, rounded corners on basically everything: context menus, app windows. Lots of things are rounded now, which is super fun, and it looks much cleaner as well. I actually really prefer the rounded look. It's funny, going back to the Windows 10 builds, it makes it feel unfinished that they're all like complete like sharp corners. Making them rounded just makes it feel like there's more effort put into the UI. It's such a small change, but I think such an impactful one as well. Like I said, there's a new out-of-box experience. Again, essentially ported from 10x, a little bit tweaked here and there. But this new out-of-box experience doesn't have Cortana in it. It's straightforward. You click through the stuff. It's the pages are almost the same, really. The options are still the same, but the UI is brand new. There's like a nice new sort of animation that plays when you power it on for the first time. There's a new startup sound, a whole bunch of new sounds. In fact, all of the default sounds have been changed. But it's funny that there is a new startup sound, because we were just talking about this a few weeks ago, which I believe was just a coincidence that came up, because I didn't know about the new startup sound until after that conversation. But that's still fun to see. It's a nice sort of mod. I think it's a modern take on the Windows 95 startup sound, but I think I might just be hearing things there.
It's mild, delightful,
yes,
short, and it's just a little. And it's not a lot, right? It doesn't really it won't disturb anyone.
It's not like the Mac sound.
Oh yeah, hitting a gong.
Yeah,
it's nothing like that. So yeah, I really enjoy the new sounds. I've seen a lot of people comment that they like the new sounds too.
So in addition to that, there's also brand new snapping tools, snapping features, I guess. So there's now a sort of drop-down menu that appears when you hover over the maximize button on a window, which gives you like a predetermined set of snapping grids, not just left and right. There's a quadrant, and if you're on a bigger screen, you can actually do it in thirds as well, which is super cool. And also the animations involved with snapping and maximizing and minimizing windows is fluid now. It's incredible. Like, I didn't think Windows had it in itself to be able to be this fluid, but they've done it, and it works. And to me, it looks absolutely fantastic.
And let's just talk about that for a second, because I think I wrote an article a couple of years ago about this. One thing about Mac OS is, and iOS too, and iPad OS, is that what they seem to like about it is it's the animations, the way it feels, how fast it is.
Yeah.
And it's weird how animation frame rates impacts perception of fluidity and speed.
Sure.
And I know a lot of Android people understand this, because Android phones were some of the first ones to go to 90 and 120 hertz refresh rates. And you can make a strong argument, especially for the latest Samsung update that just came out with One UI and Android 11 and what's coming with Android 12. Android is finally getting close to where iOS is in terms of performance. Meanwhile, people on iOS instinctively know why it feels so nice and fluid. It's because every app feels the same in the way it expands and minimizes. Mac OS does this very well. I've actually joked around that Mac OS does it a little too much. It actually kind of gives me a motion sickness, and I really hate how when you minimize and it bounces like a little beach ball. It's I found that corny. The animations for Windows 11 are definitely, the frame rate is higher. Everything just feels smoother. And it's also not cloying and annoying, sort of like what I've complained about with Mac OS. It doesn't feel like a toy. It doesn't feel like gimmicky and oh, look, you can bounce around. It's purposeful, but smooth, but not overdone. And also, you showed in the video the gestures.
Right.
And a lot of people have complained about tablet mode in Windows 10 fairly. And they got rid of tablet mode now, apparently, in Windows 11.
Right.
And a lot of people got mad at that, but instead, the OS is just, the whole thing is now tablet friendly. Maybe you can go through some of the new gestures. I just know I just tried it on the Surface Pro 6, And now when you drag your finger from the left or right side, that menu attaches to your finger, right? It
Yeah,
follows the finger
right.
very
So
closely.
in on the subject of fluidity, they've added some subtle animations that just make it easier to determine when you've actually grabbed hold of a window. So in Windows 10, there's no feedback to the user that you've actually grabbed or hit the correct position on an app window, for example, or resizing a window. You know, you've done it many times. If you use Windows on a tablet and you've tried to resize a window, you've definitely had to try more than once because there's no visual feedback that you've actually grabbed the edge of the window. On Windows 11, that's changed. And the hitboxes are now larger as well, I believe. So you can sort of tap a centimeter or two outside of the window, and the window will actually stretch to your finger and let you know that you've actually grabbed onto it, so you can now begin resizing it. Same with moving it around. If you touch the title bar, the app sort of pushes in just to let you know that, hey, you've got hold of me, you can now begin moving me around. And it's like these small changes make a big difference for touch users specifically. In addition to that, if you use Windows in portrait mode, like on a Surface Go, for example, it now has top-bottom snapping. So if you snap to the right, it snaps up, and if you snap to the left, it snaps down rather than side by side. And that makes sense when you're in portrait mode because that gives you more space in the app. If you were to snap side by side in portrait mode, which is what Windows 10 does, you can't really use the apps. It doesn't make sense to do it that way. So they fixed that finally. And as Dan mentioned, tablet mode, like the actual quick action and stuff, is gone in Windows 11. They just expect you to use the desktop UX with touch because of all of these
Which is all I
improvements.
ever wanted,
Yeah.
to be honest. Like, I always found tablet mode like a little like, why? Why's it got to shift?
Yeah.
Why can't you just make the OS itself just kind of touch friendly? And I don't mean that trivially. I know it's hard to do, and there's a lot of work that went involved. But that's exactly what Microsoft has done here.
Yeah, and the gestures as well. So there's now an option in settings for 3 or 4 finger gestures. So for example, I can use 3 or 4 fingers to swipe down to minimize an app, 3 and 4 fingers swipe up to bring that app back, and then another swipe up opens task view, of which timeline is gone, by the way. It's been replaced by the recommended sort of area in the new start menu, which makes sense. The timeline never worked. I think this new start menu replacement makes so much more sense in that regard. And then there's also, if you tap and hold with 4 fingers, that brings up virtual desktops, and you can switch between virtual desktops, which is super cool. And I think that's basically all the big stuff for gestures. Swiping in from the left no longer opens task view. It opens up the Windows widgets panel, which we'll talk about in a second. Swiping in from the right still opens Action Center. There's no longer a swipe down to close apps, though. That's gone, and I don't know if that will return. You are now expected to just sort of either minimize it with the 3 finger gesture down, or just close the window with the X button.
Which, I mean, that's, again, so, this, I want to make this very clear. I think Microsoft's intention with Windows 11, it's very different from what Windows 8 was.
Yeah.
Windows 8 was really trying to create a new UI paradigm, and obviously didn't resonate well with people. But that's what they were going for. They were going to create their own style. And they did. And it made sense because you had Windows Phone, and then Xbox was there too. And this goes back to Ballmer's original 3 screens in a cloud concept, right? And when you had everything matching, had it caught on, it would have been genius, right? It would have been like everything's the same and would have been different. Unfortunately, Windows Phone never really took off, and Windows 8 was hated, and then Xbox kind of went in its own direction. What they're kind of doing with Windows 11, I believe, and I'll be curious about Microsoft's position on this. They want the operating system to reflect what is currently known and how people use computers and phones, specifically phones and tablets. So these gestures you just mentioned, they're kind of similar to what you see on an iPad. Or like on iPad, you don't really close apps. Same on your phone, right? I know Android users are still into this idea of closing apps, but on iPhone, you just minimize them and they just go into the background because they get frozen and tombstoned, right? That was the phrase from Windows Phone we had years ago. And that's the same paradigm you expect here, that when you're using touch and everything like that, you're not really supposed to worry about closing, because, oh my God, I got to save resources and I'm going to run out of RAM. They kind of solved a lot of that stuff a long time ago. So the paradigm shouldn't be, how do I close apps? It should be just how do I get rid of it for a second, go on to my next thing. And related to that, we know there's a settings, it's hidden, but you can search for it, which is called Wake on Touch, which is this idea that the display is off and you double tap or touch the screen and it wakes up again. And I know some people have been confused about this, but again, it mimics what we expect in how we use smartphones. That's how phones work. And if you have it doesn't make sense if you're opening up a Surface or your laptop to do this. but it makes sense if your laptop is on the desk, opened, and the screen is off in standby. You can come up and just tap the display and it wakes up. I know you can use the power button, but you could say that about phones too. But again, they seem to be bringing the idea of a PC closer to tablets and phones and these paradigms and how we use them. I think that's a really interesting thing. I'm curious what Microsoft's position on it. It's even with the design. A lot of people are commenting about the centered launcher and the start menu and how it looks. But if you've used Android, if you use iOS or iPad OS, I feel like you could just look and just pick it up and know exactly where everything is and know how it works. And that's really important for getting people to use Windows.
Yeah, and the experience so far, like I said, it's not finished, but what we have in this build is very, it's delightful. It's a big change from the sort of corporate esque sort of design of Windows 10. That's sort of very stale and sensible. I'm not saying that the Windows 11 UX isn't sensible, but it's definitely more friendly, and I think that makes a big deal for the general population. I'm not sure how enterprises are going to respond to this. I'll be very interested to see what Microsoft's enterprise play is with Windows 11. But for consumers, I think this is going to be a really good update, and I think that leads us nicely into what isn't here. So there is a lot that's not here. A lot of people sort of looked at this build and were like, "Is that it? That can't be everything for an update that is calling itself Windows 11." And those people would be right. That isn't everything. We won't get into it too much. We don't want to spoil everything, but things like going back and reading my, an article about Sun Valley from October, I mentioned things like a new system tray, new action center. That stuff isn't here, and we still believe that stuff is coming, as well as new inbox app updates, so new UIs for things like photos and the file explorer. All of that is not here, and we are still expecting that to show up with this release. So I think we're in for an exciting time with Windows 11. The event next week, although, like I said, much of it has been spoiled, we still haven't seen everything. So it's definitely going to be worth tuning in, because I believe they'll probably talk about not only the Windows 11 stuff, but obviously the store, their design thinking and why they've made these design decisions, some new features and platform features as well, because obviously Windows 11 is based on Cobalt, which has been in testing with insiders for like 6 months to a year now. Microsoft has documented a whole bunch of platform changes already via the insider program, but I believe there's stuff that they haven't talked about, which I'm sure they will talk about at the event as well. I'm sure we'll see a new lock screen. I'm sure we're going to see some other stuff which hasn't been talked about anywhere yet. So I'm very, very, very excited for Windows 11. I'm glad the name's out there now, so we can stop debating this stupid thing. It's Windows 11, guys.
And let's talk. Yeah, I mean, some people comments are like, I wrote an article about this, about how it should have just been called 10.1 or 10.2.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, it's not your operating system. Sorry. You don't get to do the versioning. You're not the engineer. You're not the developer. How many of you have gone after Android 12 for being called Android 12? Like, what about Android 12 do you think really deserves a whole new number versus Android 11.5, which is kind of what I would call it? I mean, do you look at Android 12 and think, oh my God, they revolutionized Android? No, it's nice. It's little modern improvements. But this idea, it's always subjective about when you switch to a new version number. But fundamentally, it's usually about the new UI. And I wrote an article about this because even if it was just a new start menu, let's go through the history. What was the big change between Windows 7 and Windows 8? The start menu. It had a whole new user interface. What was the big change between Windows 8 and Windows 8.1? Actually, the user interface again. They kind of got rid of the big start menu, made that the secondary thing, brought back the desktop. What was the big change between Windows 8.1 and Windows 10? They even went further and they merged live tiles with the start menu and gave us that. Fundamentally, these are the same operating systems, all right? But historically speaking, when Microsoft did a new version, it was about the start menu. Why? Because Windows 95 made it clear the vision and the idea behind Windows was the start menu. That was the whole marketing campaign behind Windows. You can go look it up. It was Start Me Up. They used the Rolling Stones song. It was so annoying. That was the whole thing. The start menu was the key feature. So yeah, them going from Windows 10 to 11, and redoing the start menu has history and precedence.
Yeah.
That said, we've already hinted upon, and this article should be going live soon, about how there's massive performance improvements with Windows 11 over Windows 10, because there is a lot of under the hood stuff which none of you are qualified to comment on or understand at this point. And Zach and I don't actually know all the details of. We just know there are these under the hood performance improvements that they've done to this operating system to modernize it, make it improve performance that we're going to see. In other words, your current laptop or new hardware is going to be able to leverage this to get faster performance, whether it's just the boot times, the SSD performance, or even on benchmarks. That's what it looks like so far. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And Zach already talked about, yeah, there's stuff in this that's missing. This is, first of all, this was a leaked build from May. We're in towards the end of June right now. This isn't expected to ship till October. And yes, it's going to be a free update. This is about Windows as a service. This idea is it's just going to be a continuous update. You're just going to have an update in the fall. You can take it, probably put it off. You'll get the update. But we're very far from this thing being finalized. You know, a lot of people complain, oh, the Action Center looks the same. True. And the little taskbar area looks the same. Yep. And there's not enough dark mode in places like Task Manager, super important, I know. And then there's also things that we just new features that we don't know about, right? These things are coming. These things are going to be there. That, you know, that leaked build is literally a snapshot at a time, but we know there's stuff in there that's not public yet. So to judge it on that, I'm just saying I'm tuning into June 24th because I know there's stuff that we know is coming. I also know there's stuff I don't know is coming that I'm very excited about. And there's stuff that I know Zach knows that he's not sharing that he knows about, which is very exciting, actually, really cool stuff. So yeah, it actually is a big change. But regardless of what it's called anyway, it is refreshing to use. I've actually put it on 4 devices. So
I'm running it right now. The podcast is being brought to you via Windows 11 as we speak.
That's what's really kind of cool here. What they did was, you know, insiders have been testing the plumbing for this for a long time already. And what we're going to be getting with this update is basically a refreshed UI, but also a lot of new features too. But stability-wise, it's solid. Like, that's the weird thing.
Well, that's the beauty of how they've developed this version. As I mentioned, the platform's done. The RTM build is here internally. They've RTM'd this release of Windows, but the UX isn't done. And the reason they can get away with doing that this time is because the UX is undocked and therefore can be developed independently, like an app update. So come October, they've had this RTM build since June. The platform is solid. They've been servicing it with bug fixes since then. Meanwhile, internally and in the Insider program, they've been flighting new builds of the UX via Windows Update or the Microsoft Store. We don't know how they will push them out, but they will be able to do that. Come October, we have the entire UX ready to go, polished, clean, and that sits on top of the stable base that we've had since June. It's a really interesting way of developing Windows, and I assume this is how they're going to do things going forward. We'll have a major platform update every year or so, but then Microsoft can just service the UI and add new features whenever they feel like it, because it's now essentially an app.
It's funny too. Some people mentioned in comments that it reminds them of Android, the new start menu. I would actually say it looks more like Microsoft Launcher on Android.
Yeah.
Which again is another little bit of similarity between the icons and the layout and this sort of idea of like widgets and stuff like that. Again, trying to make these experiences more close. We should also mention new inbox apps, right? Or at least mail.
We're expecting most of the important inbox apps to get design refreshes. Mail and calendars in a weird place because although they will get a slight design update, they're being replaced next year with the One Outlook stuff, which we've talked about before, Project Monarch. So they will be getting a UI refresh, but they're not getting new features and stuff. Those will essentially be retired eventually and replaced with One Outlook. But other apps like Photos and File Explorer, we are expecting those to get some significant UI updates or changes with this release, because the inbox app experiences are very important to the Windows experience. You know, Microsoft has just promoted Notepad and Paint to the main apps list in Windows 11. They're falling back on this idea that, we need to provide a coherent out-of-box experience. We can't just be a platform for other things. We need to at least provide the essentials. And I would argue right now, Windows essentials aren't very good. Like the Photos app especially is terrible. Nobody likes it. It's heavy. It's so heavy for what it is. The default music player, Groove Music, Music was fun when it was a subscription service, but is overkill for what it is now. They just need a lightweight music player or like an audio file player for Windows. All that, File Explorer has been the same since Windows 8. I do believe that that's in for a refresh with this release as well. Again, not in the leaks build, but we will hopefully see that next week. So yeah, this is definitely going to be a big one. Oh, I didn't talk about widgets real quick. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, but just to clarify, widgets is a new thing in this release of Windows, which is essentially just news and interest, but moved into some dedicated panel. And the reason they've done that, I think, is because obviously with the centered taskbar, there's no longer any room for the weather widget that sits on the taskbar. So they've moved it into this widgets panel. Some might like that, some might not. I actually preferred the weather on the taskbar. I think that was the only useful part of news and interests. But they've taken that away and just made it a button, which is now called widgets. So there you go.
Yeah, so when you look at it, you got new UI, new start menu.
Yep.
We're expecting a new action center, new store experience. And that store experience is not just a new design, but we're expecting probably some fundamental changes to the app model, what's allowed there.
Yeah, well, I've written about that in the past, so we are still expecting that new store design with the new policy changes, which I can't remember off the top of my head. I think they involve like opening up the store to more app types like raw.exes, allowing developers to use their own content delivery networks and update servicing models, as well as using their own monetization platforms. I think those are the big three that they're going to do, and we assume that that's what they're going to talk about next week. I'd be surprised if they don't. If the store's another thing, that'd be shocking to me.
Yeah, and so there's the new stored experience. There's also the developer story. We are expecting developer information because there is this idea of developing Windows 11 apps. Now we don't expect what's going to be really interesting about this shift is, everything that runs on Windows 10 runs on Windows 11. Yeah. We've already talked about the stability of the operating system, which is going to be another big shift between Windows 8 and Windows 10, because going to Windows 10 at first, those beta builds were pretty rough. And we're not expecting that this time. We're expecting a much more smooth transition, especially over the summertime as insiders are testing it. This is not going to be like some weird, janky, broken system. Even this early build we've been running has been pretty solid. But then you have, so new action center, new store model, new sounds, new startup, new out-of-box experience, under the hood performance improvements, which we've already started to see in terms of performance and it running on lower end hardware as well as newer hardware, new features for hardware. I think all of this does, and we haven't even talked about, because in some of this we don't want to spoil it, but in some of it we don't know, there are like new features too, like new things that are going to be part of Windows 11. And I think all that's just very exciting. So, and we should mention, there was sort of a controversy a little bit that, people thought Microsoft leaked this on purpose.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
Because it happens every time. There's this like, I've been doing this job for a very long time. I can't really think of the amount of times of a controlled leak, what people refer to as, like a company passes something off to me and goes, wink, wink, you can post this, but don't tell anyone. I've never been a part of that. I have no idea. I imagine it maybe has happened in the past, but I can't tell you it's standard practice. I've been doing this job for over a decade. Like I've never had, especially Microsoft, sometimes we get stuff in advance, and then the idea is like, oh, here's the embargo dates, and you can then talk about it after the embargo, and that's other sites have that too, right? So this idea that this was the theory. Microsoft purposely leaked this build of an operating system. They put in through it Windows 11. So, to be clear, we're not making this up. Like when you run the installer, it goes, ready to install Windows 11. And it says it a couple of times and Windows 11 there. When you restart it, it's like, oh, installing Windows 11. And then when you go to WinBur, it says Windows 11. And you go to About, it says Windows 11. Like it's Windows 11 throughout it. This idea that like Microsoft took the time to code in Windows 11 everywhere into it. Because like I don't know why, because you wrote an article like 2 weeks earlier.
Yeah, they're trolling just me.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Zach says it's Windows 11. We're gonna, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the time and actually code this into a new build of an operating system. And there's a dual conspiracy here. One, that the Windows 11 name is not real, or maybe it's a code name, and the other one is that what we saw in this leaked build was a diversion. That's not the real operating system. They didn't really do that with the start menu. So on June 24th, they're going to get on stage and like give us the real name or show us the real operating system. And it's just so ludicrous and insane. We know for a fact Microsoft isn't happy about this. And if they were just doing it for the name, like, oh, they're going to really give the real name. It's like, so what? So we got to see the big UI changes, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them already. We got to do videos, we got to talk about it, but they're going to get on stage and troll us with, oh, it's not Windows. Like, who cares what it's called?
Yeah. Here's what I will say. It is against Microsoft's best wishes for them to make everybody think it's called Windows 11 and then announce not Windows 11 on the day. Because at this point, this is free marketing. We are talking about Windows 11. People are saying, the mainstream media have caught on to this. Probably like Microsoft probably didn't want them to, but Windows 11 is now ingrained. If they come out and call it Windows Sun Valley, it doesn't make sense, because all of this sort of ramp up to Windows 11, it's like it's on Google now. It's in people's minds. It's a lot harder to convince people otherwise at that point. You know, we've seen the references to the number 11 in the teaser, in the developer event teaser, which is on the same day but later. There's 11 panes of glass in that one. They've also done that 11-minute slow-fi mix of the Windows startup sounds, which had 11 tangs and like a sound frequency of 11,000 hertz. Like 11 is clearly purposeful at this point, and the fact that the build leaked and it's called Windows 11, plus the fact that my sources were saying it's Windows 11 2 months ago, I'm pretty confident that they're going to call it Windows 11. And if they don't, then whoever's in charge at Microsoft in regards to this is insane.
And following on that, to cast more doubt on this bizarre conspiracy theory, over in India, there is a site called, let me get the name right here, BBomb. Never heard of them, sorry. But they're an Indian technology site. Apparently posted a story, like a lot of sites did, covering the news of this Windows 11 ISO leak. But they actually either directly linked to the ISO or hosted it themselves, both of which are no-nos, because you're setting yourself up for potential legal action. And that's exactly kind of what happened, or at least indirectly. Microsoft apparently filed a DMCA, that's a Digital Millennium Copyright Act, complaint against Google, and asking Google basically to delist them from search. So this idea of like, you go Windows 11 ISO and you type it in, and then, this site would come up near the top, apparently. Microsoft is asking Google take them off. And the reason is, this is when the complaints officially, bbomb.com's article is distributing Windows 11 ISO, parentheses, copyrighted to Microsoft. Please remove their article from the search. It is a leaked copy of the unreleased Windows 11. Now, I know lawyers technically wrote this, but the lawyers work on behalf of Microsoft. And they seem to be kind of confirming here. One, the ISO is legit. Two, it's called Windows 11. And three, it's not a planned leak, or at least that's a real jerk. Could you imagine? It's like, yeah, here's a planned leak.
And then we're going to take everyone down for talking about it. It doesn't make sense. If you're going to troll people and then also try and stop people from talking about it, it's not an effective troll.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like, again, this sort of confirms, and Zach already knew, like, he's already had reporting on this. He's known for a while about this. So it's not like we didn't look at this and just been like, oh, taking their word for it, it's Windows 11.
Right.
Like, we already knew about a lot of this. So it's not like, I thought it was a pretty bizarre conspiracy.
So I guess some of the other unknowns still is how they're going to continue updates going forward, because obviously their sort of essence and mantra up until now has been Windows 10 is the last version of Windows. Now, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. They didn't actually say that. That was just, they reaffirmed that based on comments that a Microsoft engineer at the time made. To be fair, the thinking was correct. Windows as a service, continually updating Windows was correct, and that still is correct. We believe Windows 11, when it's made available later this year, will just be an update, just like other previous versions of Windows 10. It will be in Windows Update, you press install and it downloads and installs. So Windows as a service continues. The question is, what about the update cadence? Because up until now, we've had 2 major feature updates a year, although in the last year, that's kind of not been true. We've had sort of fake feature updates because they've been working on this, and 10X, although that's not coming now. So what happens from here? Will Windows 11 be this year's release, and then next year we'll get Windows 12, or will we get Windows 11 and then Windows 11.1 or 11.2, or are they going to continue with the Windows version 20xHX format, which I hope they don't. I hate that versioning format so much. They could so easily just do Windows 11 update 1. Come on, guy. Why does this have to have the most ugliest, lamest versioning of any operating system on the planet? So we don't know about that. We don't know how they're going to market that as well. Or technically, we don't know the release date, although I'm pretty confident it's coming in October. But we'll have to see what they say next week. And yeah, so that is basically everything we know about the build. That's some of our speculation as to what we're going to see next week. I am very, very... I haven't been this excited about Windows since I heard about Windows 10X.
So, and yeah, how about installing it? So we do expect... Can you talk about that process a little bit in terms of like, is this going to wipe your computer?
So it's like I said, on Windows 10, I'm sure it will be offered to you as like a feature update. So it's an upgrade. You download, install it, you maintain your files and program stuff, and you just get the new stuff. You can clean it. It's an ISO. It's not Windows Core OS, so you can clean install this on existing PCs if you want. Although this build has some interesting requirements in that I think you need to have TPM 2.0 enabled in your BIOS at least, as well as at least 2 CPU cores.
There's about the TPM stuff. I think because a lot of hardware, you get a lot of enterprise hardware has TPM, but I don't know if a lot of consumer devices.
Right, that's the thing. That's what I think that's one of the problems. I think a lot of BIOSes have it, but it's just disabled, and you just have to go in and enable it. I don't know about this. Like I'm not.
I talk about the leaked ISO.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the leaked ISO specifically. Because I tried to install this in a virtual machine first, and I set it to 1 CPU core, and it said no, you need at least 2 CPU cores, which is I don't think Windows 10 has that problem. Maybe it does, I don't know. But yeah, there are some requirements changes that appear to be part of this ISO. I don't know if they will be there in the final build, or if that's just for this build. If it's a bug, I don't know. But there does appear to be some changes going on in regards to requirements for installing this clean. I'm sure upgrades will sort of be the same as what they have been in the past, so I'm not too worried about that. Again, the question of will it be free? I would be shocked if it's not free. It would be insane for Microsoft to charge for a new version of Windows in 2021, considering Apple and Google both ship new versions of their operating systems for free. I just think it would be insane. Plus, I've installed the Elite build on my version, on my Surface Studio 2, and it activated with the license key that came with Windows 10 just fine. So I assume that confirms that, existing product keys, all the way back to Windows 7, technically, should work and activate Windows 11 just fine.
Yeah, so what else should we talk about? I mean, I think we kind of almost covered everything. Got new gestures, new start menu.
Yep. So the event next week is I'm excited for it. It's because Microsoft has also announced a second event for that day, a developer-focused event at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And we assume that they're gonna announce the new Microsoft Store at the main event, and then they'll be like, tune in later today at our developer event to learn more about what this means from a developer's perspective. Now, I don't know. I doubt that means they're going to announce a new app platform specific to Windows 11. I think we're past that. Any app built for Windows 11 will work on Windows 10 and vice versa. And Microsoft will likely push Project Reunion as a core part of this, because Project Reunion is undocked, so you can actually build apps and actually send them to any version of Windows 10 you want, with whether they are supported or not. Because if you use Project Reunion, it's undocked and you can bring all the components with you. So I'm sure that's what they're going to sort of push. So if you build an app for Windows 11, in theory, it should run on Windows 10 and vice versa. There's no new app platform. Like, they're not doing UWP 2 with Windows 11. It's just that they share the same platforms, which is similar to what Microsoft did with the new Xbox generation. The Series X and Series X is essentially just an Xbox One with more power. This is kind of the same thing. The Windows 11 is basically Windows 10 at its core, but with a new UX and new features and new UI and all that, all the stuff that makes a new operating system worthy of being a new operating system. A lot of people are like, but why aren't they doing faster Windows Update? Why aren't things containerized, etc., etc.? They're asking for Windows Core OS, and as we all know, that's not happening this year now. who knows in the future? Like I said, Sun Valley is specifically a UX effort. It's not really about the platform. I'm sure that over time, Microsoft will get back to working on the platform and adding those Windows Core things that made Windows Core so good at being a lightweight, fast operating system. But that's not. I do not think that's going to be part of Windows 11 because it's not there in the build that just leaked, and I don't think we have enough time between now and October to put that in, test it, make sure it's good. So that will probably be in the future. But, Windows 11 is not the last version of Windows. We're going to get a newer version of Windows at some point, and then an even newer version of Windows that will have more stuff. I'm sure they will get around to those platform innovations eventually.
And two things I want to talk about. One, should people try to go and download this ISO and install it themselves? I'm going to, officially we can't tell you to do that. But unofficially, I would also advise you not to do that. First of all, you don't know where that ISO's come from, right? You don't know who it's slept with. But seriously, it could be packed. You don't know what's actually in it. It is risky putting this on machines. Two, we're pretty confident, June 24th, next week, next Thursday, Microsoft announces this. We expect soon thereafter a preview release of Windows 11 for everyone to try themselves. I would encourage people to wait for that. I do expect that version to be significantly different and more evolved than what this version is.
Yes.
We also don't know if you're on this version, can you just upgrade? Like, will it just take a new update and you're going to be like on
I
it?
think
We
it will.
don't.
I think it will.
Okay.
Because Windows 10 builds have leaked in the past unofficially, and those have historically been updatable from that build to whatever official is released afterwards. I don't think that it doesn't make sense for that to change because
Okay.
why would you block off people from update unless there's a technical reason, which I don't think there will be. Like I said, this is a near final RTM build, so I think we're past that. Yeah.
And we haven't really talked about Windows on ARM, of course, but we do expect
Right.
this to support ARM.
Right, because again, like I said, this is based on Cobalt, and Cobalt is what introduces Windows Subsystem for Linux graphical apps, as well as x64-bit app emulation on ARM. That still hasn't shipped in the production version of Windows, and we believe now it will ship as under Windows 11. So Windows 11 is going to be a huge update, not only in UX, but for app compatibility on ARM PCs.
Yeah, and we don't know what else has changed for Windows on ARM in terms of performance and optimizations. Did they improve the emulation layer? Is there a story there? We don't know. I mean, maybe there isn't, right? Maybe whatever is happening. Maybe it's not. We already know, and the article just went live. I already shared it about the performance improvements that one person has documented between Windows 11 and Windows 10. We already know there's those performance improvements, which should carry over to ARM as well, because presumably the OS is better optimized, leverages GPUs better, and all this kind of stuff. So even on ARM devices, we should see, performance improvement. Like, I mean, if you're on a desktop or, running a laptop with a Core i7, a 15% improvement in performance is significant. It's nice. Don't get me wrong. Everything's going to feel more zippy, especially with those animations. But really where it's going to kind of matter is on things like Surface Go, on Windows on ARM devices.
Yeah.
Devices where they can kind of struggle a little bit in terms of performance. That extra 15% is actually going to go a lot further than I would say on like a Core i7 laptop or a desktop PC. It'll be nice on those, but I think, for people with Surface Go's, Atom processors, Windows on ARM devices, and I haven't loaded it on a Surface Pro X yet. Actually, I should talk to you about.
You can't. It's not an ARM compiled build yet. So it only leaked in x64, so there's no ARM version of it. I'm sure there will be officially eventually, but not with this leak.
And so that's going to be very exciting. Another thing we didn't talk about that people are missing on that we are expecting is the stacks. And the stacks is like, I'm using it as a very generic term, but in terms of the Wi-Fi and cellular protocols built into Windows, presumably those are going to be refreshed and updated too. Same with Bluetooth.
Yes.
Basically, the radios operate. One thing Windows has gotten pretty good at is the handoff between cellular and Wi-Fi and running both at the same time. I've done tests on battery running like a ARM PC or even a Core i7 with an LTE modem. There's really, or even like the Surface Pros, right? Leaving the modem on connected to LTE doesn't significantly impact battery life. It actually doesn't impact battery life at all if you're on Wi-Fi, just leaving it running. but still the handoff can be improved and how that switches and is optimized, and those radios and all that kind of stuff. So, presumably those are also going to be changed and improved upon. And there's been like, some people have pointed out in some of the comments too about like under the hood improvement in terms of the scheduler and the optimization for big little cores. We also don't know about new hardware, right? So I mentioned before about the wake to touch. I don't think existing hardware will support that. I don't know.
Yeah, they're also working on, and I have mentioned this before, they're also working on wake on approach, which I think is an Intel thing.
So that's what's called human presence detection.
Yes, that's right. I believe they're building that natively into the OS.
That would make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what Zach's talking about was on Dell laptops and HP laptops, some of them. So you see mostly in the EliteBooks and the Latitudes. They have these extra sensors near the web camera that are kind of hidden, and it works on almost like a sonar type system. This idea is when your laptop or your PC is opened or your desktop, because it's spoiler, it's going to be coming to other desktop PCs. Basically, when you're in front of it, the computer knows you're in front of it and stays open. But if you were to walk away, the computer would auto lock. And it's a security thing. That's why you're seeing it in the business laptops first. But then when it's locked, it could be like the screen off, right? It's in standby mode at this point. Then when you walk back in front of it, it detects that a person is there, not an object. It detects people. It's that sensitive. It detects a person's there. It starts to wake up and it kicks in Windows Hello IR. And if it recognizes you, then it wakes up and turns on, logs you in automatically. I've demoed this on Twitter before. It's fascinating. It's great in the kitchen if you're cooking, because your laptop will just turn on. And what Zach's talking about is Intel has done this. You don't see this on AMD laptops at all, because Intel's done the work with the sensors. And he's basically saying that, they're going to build this into the operating system itself, at least at a deeper core level. And this is where I've always talked about Intel has the advantage over AMD right now. AMD's got the performance and the cores, no doubt, but Intel is like really going deep into sensors and making the computer smarter. And this idea of it just wakes on approach it's really cool when you use it. And you want to see more of it coming to laptops. There's a bunch of that stuff that, someone mentioned USB 4, right? That's a good one too, right? Support for that, PCI 4.0, more optimizations there. These people, I should say, Microsoft, know the new hardware that's planned for the next couple of years, things that they're working on. Yeah. And you're presumably going to start to see that support built into Windows 11. And that ties directly into something we don't know a ton about, but in October. Zach mentioned we are expecting this to ship in October. That's traditionally when we see these things. Well, going by history, Microsoft should have a Surface event in October as well.
Right, yes.
And going by history, they've taunted 2015. We've talked about this. That 2015 was this like legendary moment that they really haven't been able to repeat since. They get on stage, here's Windows 10. Here's a new Surface Pro. It has Windows Hello login. That was new. Here's Surface Book. It's our new laptop. Oh, look, the screen detaches. And of course, they also had Windows Phone and Microsoft Band, but it was a massive event, right? That HoloLens there. It was just like this whole thing. And they've never been able to replicate that. I feel like in October, they're going to have a similar event. Obviously, no phone. I don't want to, but there will
Well, there'll be Duo 2.
You expect Surface Duo version 2 with all the new hardware you guys want in it. We do expect a Surface Pro 8, and we are hearing it's going to be a significant revision to the hardware. I would imagine Wake on Touch, it would be a part of that. Thinner bezels. I don't think it's going to be AMD. Sorry, I do think it's going to remain Intel. Mostly because I've never seen a fanless AMD laptop, and they need to have fanless for at least a Surface Pro i5, so they can fit that LTE modem in there. But who knows? Who knows? We do expect a new Surface Pro X with a SQ3 processor, maybe Surface Studio 3. Anything else I'm missing? Oh, you've heard.
Yeah. Well, we don't know enough to talk about it, I don't think. But there could be some others. There could be another thing as well that we don't really know anything about. So, but I think what the point is that in October, alongside Windows 11, these will be the first PCs, some of the first PCs to ship with this new operating system. And it's going to be a big push into the new Windows. And I'm sure, Microsoft will be there with Surface and and whatever. But then we're also going to see Dell and HP with their own laptops and tablets and whatever else. Plus, will we see Surface Neo and the return of dual screen / foldable PCs with Windows 11? I think it's possible because, we've seen this UX so far. It's similar to 10X. There's a whole new snapping system and stuff. It really could be done if they really wanted to. But will we see that? I don't know. I tell you, it would be really cool if because they're not going to talk about hardware at this event. I do not think this is the place for that, for this June event. However, I do think it would be good if they ended the show with the announcement that the Surface Neo will ship with Windows 11 this fall, and they could do maybe a brief demo or a brief tease with that and how that UX works. But then they won't talk about it again until October, because I think they need to keep the focus on Windows at this event. And OEMs would want that as well. I don't think OEMs want Microsoft to come out and announce Surface Pro 8 with Windows 11. It takes the limelight away from Windows, and it takes the limelight away from OEMs. So I assume that's what they'll just be Windows, and hopefully, fingers crossed. I don't know anything. That's just a guess. Fingers crossed they re-announce Neo with Windows 11.
Right. Two things I want to clear up they often hear about. One, and you touched upon this a little bit earlier, this idea that we've talked about endlessly, that they said Windows 10 was going to be the last version, which they never actually publicly said. That was an interview with an engineer who said that. And what they were really talking about was the model for the operating system. Yes. This idea that there will never be a version you would buy in a retail box. That'll be a clean break from the existing one. Instead, it's going to be Windows as a service. Really, the big announcement was not the Windows 10 name, and they meant it as that's the last version only. They were really referring to it as Windows as a service. This idea that once you get the license, it'll be forever updated, and it will bring new features, which we've seen over the last 6 years, and revisions to it. They never said we're not going to ever revise the operating system enough or change the name of it. So that is... I see that all the time. Microsoft said, no, it's not on their website. They've never said it publicly. It was one instance of someone saying it, then it just gets blown up. The other one I see talk about is when we bring up Surface Duo as a phone, they're like, but it's not a phone. No, it's a phone.
Yeah. Duo 2 is definitely more so a phone than Duo 1.
It's like, no, Pano said it's not a phone. He never said that. 100%.
He said it's a Surface.
Yeah, he says it's a Surface first. Yes, it's a phone. And yes, it can message, but it's more than that. He was saying it's more than a phone.
Yes.
Not that it's not a phone. Stop saying this. You people who say it are the problem on the internet. You're the ones that forward emails that you don't read. You retweet stories that you don't read. Why we have that stupid feature now? You spread chain emails, and it's just ignorance. You got to go read the original sources. I've posted this numerous times. I'll keep doing it. You're wrong. Stop saying it. It's funny how information like that spreads, though. But
yeah.
All right. Wow. Is that the entire podcast? Is that all we're going to talk about?
I think there's some Xbox stuff we wanted to briefly mention. It won't take too long. But yeah, basically that's half of the Windows event. That's likely going to happen next week. But yeah, like we said, there is still more to this Windows 11 release that isn't in the build. So I'm excited for the event next week, and everybody should still be excited. I hope that we get an insider preview next week, like an official preview build. Listen, if Apple can do it, I don't see why Microsoft can't. But I guess we'll see, because Microsoft is good at disappointing us. But we will have to wait and see regarding that. So yeah, Windows 11 confirmed, coming soon, super exciting. And now on to Xbox. So Microsoft did like a second part to the game showcase. So, did we talk about E3 last week?
No.
Oh my God. It's all of E3. I don't have any notes for E3. So Microsoft did E3 on Sunday, just gone. That feels like a lifetime ago, where they announced a whole bunch of new games, many of which are coming to Game Pass. They also announced that Starfield, I think it's called, will be Xbox exclusive. It was rumored to be for a while. Lots of PlayStation fans that were like, no way. But yes, it's confirmed to be Xbox exclusive. And I believe all Bethesda titles going forward will be Xbox exclusive. And by Xbox exclusive, we mean Xbox ecosystem exclusive. So that means Xbox and PC. It just basically means not PlayStation. That's what it means at this point, which is fine. As PlayStation has its exclusives, Xbox can have their own, and it's perfectly acceptable. And Xbox needs more exclusives, because that's one of its biggest criticisms, right? That Xbox has no games. That couldn't be further from the truth. Now, Microsoft has a bunch of different game studios. They are planning to release one big Xbox exclusive every month for the rest of the year. and that includes things like Forza Horizon 5, which was announced at this event, Halo Infinite, which still doesn't have a release date. We're expecting it in November or December. And some other things which I cannot remember off the top of my head. But the games, the event showcase was really good. I'm going to focus on the Halo bit because that's all I really care about. They talked a bit about the campaign again and just talked about how, it's Chief's story and how the game's open world. They didn't really show much gameplay of the campaign. They did, however, they did show off the multiplayer for the first time. And that was a big deal for the Halo community because we've not seen the Halo Infinite multiplayer yet. It's free to play, which I think we knew for a while now. And that it will have battle passes and seasons, not just like any other game. But unlike other games, the battle passes will always be available to you, so they're not timed. So if you miss out on one, you can go back and get it if you want and unlock all the stuff in there. They've also confirmed that anything that's in the battle pass cannot be unlocked by paying for it. You have to earn it by playing the game, which makes it much more fair for those who actually put time into the game rather than just a newcomer logging in, buying everything and then having the best equipment, which is what you can do in some games but not in Halo. They're trying to make it as fair as possible. They didn't really detail any of the maps or Forge or nothing. They talked about some of the new vehicle things, like the Warthogs can break apart now, like wheels can fall off and stuff. There's also storage on one of them. And yeah, so that's the Halo Infinite stuff. I didn't do any research into E3. I cannot remember none of it.
It's fine. I think we did talk about some of that last week, so
hopefully. Well, they also announced the Xbox mini fridge, although we kind of knew that was coming, but they officially announced it in a cool trailer at the very end of E3. It was like, here's the event, and then Phil Spencer came on. He said, thanks for watching, goodbye. Then they did that wrap up trailer thing where they show off all the games again, and then it was like a title card, thanks for watching, and then the title card faded to black, and then the trailer for the Xbox mini fridge played. So I feel like a lot of people tuned out at that point, but I just left it on and that started playing. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. So they didn't give us any price or any release date, but I think it's coming. I think it's supposed to be coming later this year, and that'll be fun, although I bet it's US only, because only the US need to keep drinks chilled in an office space. They also announced Flight Simulator is coming to Xbox consoles next month, I believe it is, which is super fun. I don't know if it's 4K. I don't think it's 60 hertz 4K. Listen, Flight Simulator is a demanding game. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 30 frames a second, but that's fine. And there's got some new
with the Flight Simulator, they announced a new Land Anywhere feature. We have to land anywhere.
I thought, could you not already do that? You could in the old one.
You can kind of force it, I think, but I know some people have landed in some weird spots, but I think it's gonna be more official or something like that.
That'd be cool, yeah. What else did they announce? They talked about. I can't remember. I genuinely cannot remember all the stuff they announced at E3. Anyway, the point is that they early this week as well, they did a part 2 to the game showcase, and they talked a bit more. They sort of went in depth with some of the game announcements and stuff. But they also announced that Xbox Design Labs are returning. So if you are into the custom Xbox controllers, you can now finally order those again, and they're now based on the Series X controllers. So they have the share button and the textured triggers and stuff. And they also announced that xCloud is coming to consoles. Specifically Xbox One. Now, you may, on the surface, it doesn't really sound like anything, but it is. It's important because we're now at a point in the Xbox One's life where new games are going to launch and they won't be Xbox One compatible. And I've lost focus for some reason. And what that means is that, when GTA 6 comes out, which hasn't been announced, but let's just say, for example, GTA 6 launches in 2024. That game there's no way that game launches on Xbox One. That would be a Series X, PS5, the current gen game only. So Xbox One won't be able to play it. But with xCloud, assuming Rockstar wants to put GTA on xCloud, you will be able to play that game on your Xbox One, therefore extending the shelf life of your Xbox One console. This is a big deal. It means Xbox Ones are going to be useful for way longer. You will be able to sit down and play a next-gen title on your previous-gen console via streaming. That's great. That's super cool. Imagine, this is going to be great for kids everywhere who can't afford to buy the new console, or can't even get access to one because they're not available anywhere because of the chip shortage. You will still be able to play these next gen games, and I think that's really good. But yeah, I think that's everything for the Xbox stuff that's most important, unless I missed anything. I'm sure the chat will let me know.
Sorry, I was just, while you were doing that, it gave me time to find that Panos quote.
Oh, you want to read it for us?
Yes. Panos on the Surface Duo. This is the quote that everybody thinks he says it's not a phone. He says, I want to be super clear about this. Get that, people? Super clear. You're going to talk about this as a phone, and I get that. And you're going to talk about it as a communication device. And it does both of those things incredibly well, for sure. For sure, you can text, you can write, you can do what you want, but make no mistake, this product is a surface. And he never said it's not a phone. He's just saying yes, it's a phone. Yes, you can text on it, but it's at its heart, it's a surface. And he means it's basically pushing the paradigm forward, which is always what surface devices do. They always take what exists and, push it to a new level and basically try something different. So yes, Surface Duo was a phone.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've used it as a phone the whole time. And sure, it's not a good phone, but it's still a phone. Anyway, back to the E3 stuff real quick. Yes, Sea of Thieves, thank you, Stavros, for mentioning that. Sea of Thieves announced a Disney partnership with Pirates of the Caribbean. So Captain Jack and all those, Captain Jack Sparrow and all of those characters are now coming to Sea of Thieves, and there'll be like a story-based campaign around that. I don't know if the voice actor is what's his face, who actually plays Captain Jack Sparrow in the movies. It sounds a lot like him, but I don't know if they got him back or if it's a voice double. If it is a voice double, it's a good voice double. Because I was convinced. I couldn't tell if it was what's his name, Johnny Depp. That's right. I couldn't tell if it was Johnny Depp or not. They also, as I mentioned, they announced Forza Horizon 5. Me and Dan, we both played Forza Horizon 4. We kind of really enjoyed that game, so I'm quite excited for Horizon 5. I believe it's set in Mexico City, I think. I can't remember. So that's going to be fun. The last one was set in Scotland, I think. No, or was it England? I can't remember. I think it was just Scotland.
Just give me the Hot Wheels. Just give me the Hot Wheels add-on.
Yeah.
That was so fun.
Yeah.
Speaking of, actually, we are planning on bringing back Microsoft Gaming and Libations, or MGL,
at some point. We were supposed to do it this week, but we couldn't.
We were supposed to do it today, but yeah, everything's off the charts this time. But yeah, that's where me, Zach Bowden, and Jez Corden, our Xbox editor, get together, stream a game, usually have a couple of beers, and talk about whatever we want, just kind of relax. And we used to do Forza too. Like that was kind of the fun one, especially with the Hot Wheels stuff. So.
Oh yeah, they also announced Outer Worlds 2 with a hilarious trailer. So one of the big complaints in the gaming industry is that a lot of game developers love to show off CGI trailers that show no gameplay, no game features, just things that basically aren't in the game. And this Outer Worlds 2 trailer was basically all of that, with a really epic narrator talking about how all of those things are unbelievable. Like, here's this new character who won't be in the game. Here's a silhouette of the main character who we can't see yet because we've not designed him. I thought it was really funny, but essentially they were just announcing Outer Worlds 2. They, as I mentioned, they also mentioned Starfield, which is coming in November 11th, 2022. And Age of Empires 4, Redfall, which is a vampire shooting game. Psychonauts is coming in August. Thank you, Taranagast, for putting all this in the chat for me. You are refreshing my memory. So that E3 was a packed one. I do think E3, Microsoft's Games Showcase, was very strong this year. There were definitely more, air quotes, serious looking games than there were in previous years. Because one of my biggest criticisms about E3 showcases from Microsoft in the past has been, they've got some hitters, but for the most part, they always seem to be some indie title or some like 2D side scroller, which, don't get me wrong, there's a market for that and there's people who love those kind of games. I know Dan's one of them. I'm not really into those. I like proper AAA, story driven with a multiplayer component. I love that whole thing. And Microsoft in the past hasn't really had that strong of an offering in that area. But I think this year they definitely did. And that's the result of them, buying 1,000 studios and probably buying more in the future.
That's definitely true. Well, I look forward to it. I also look forward to that period in life where I could take 6 months off and catch up on all the games that I want to catch up on. Yes. Because I can tell you right now, it's sure as heck not happening. Some other brief news. Yeah, Razer had their kind of E3 thing this week. I think that was this week. Yeah, I think it was Monday. I'm like,
yeah, this week it's insane.
But, actually, I should show it right here. This is they announced Razer Blade 14, which is funny because they used to actually always have a Razer Blade 14 until they basically stuck in a bigger screen but kept the same size and made it the Razer Blade 15, which was about the size of a 14. And then they had the Razer Blade Stealth and then the Razer Book 13. So this is kind of the return of a Razer Blade 14. And it looks like every other Razer Blade. Still picks up fingerprints like crazy. Well, the secret behind this one is it runs AMD, and I know a lot of people have been asking for that. And it goes to show you what I mean, though. It's a new laptop, right? It's a new one. They didn't take the existing Razer Blade 15 or the Razer Blade Stealth and put in AMD and swap out Intel. Instead, they released a new laptop altogether, which is kind of how you're going to see this stuff happen going forward. But you know, really nice. Starts at 1799. This one has a QHD display, and it has a 3080 GPU. You can of course configure it different. I think there's also a 3070 and a 3060 GPU option, and it's got the Ryzen 9 processor in it. So I haven't benchmarked it yet. I haven't used a battery and all that kind of stuff. Literally showed up yesterday, but it's for those who are fans of AMD and want them in a gaming laptop, which I think is right now where AMD makes sense. I don't think AMD is a huge advantage in ultrabooks, but in gaming laptops, sure. So I'll be putting that through its paces, and me and Richard Devine will be both reviewing that in the coming weeks. But so far, it looks really nice. It's it's really slim, it's light, relatively. Still got the all metal chassis on it. No touch screen, no Thunderbolt 4. These are again, and no PCIe 4.0, which are kind of things that you find with AMD laptops. You can do touch on AMD laptops, so it does exist. It's just not as common. You also don't see 4K as a lot on AMD laptops. I don't know why. Thunderbolt 4 is an Intel technology, but I don't know why you don't see it on AMD laptops. I don't know if it's a licensing thing. Intel doesn't want it. AMD doesn't want to pay. If it's a hardware incompatibility, I don't know. And PCIe 4.0, I just know is not supported on the current Ryzen series. So, but all that said, the power of the CPU and that GPU should result in a really powerful machine. They also announced this doohickey, which I'm actually a little bit more excited about, because when I do travel, this is going to be super exciting. Although it's very expensive. This is, if you're not viewing the podcast, I'm sorry. I'm holding a black block. This is Razer's new GaN charger. GaN is a technology that was announced around 2020. It's a new material that's used for insulation and basically the electric system in portable chargers. It's much more efficient than the older material, which I think was silicon. And because of that, they can make smaller, more compact designs that don't get hot, or as hot, I should say. So this little guy here, which literally fits in your pocket, fits in the palm of my hand. And it's nice because it has the little prongs that fold out from the back of it, so you don't need a cord. Plugs into a wall. It has 2 Type-C and 2 Type-A ports. And the total wattage of it is 130 watts, which is a lot. Now, Type-C is still bound by the 100-watt limit. So you can only get 100 watts out of one of these Type-Cs. But then you still have an extra 30 watts between the other 3 if you were to maximize it that way. That's going to change. They announced that Type-C will go up to 240 watts, but that's probably another year or two, at least a year, probably 2-3 years away from happening. But for now, you can get this little guy. Most ultrabooks only use 65 watts, right? Some are going up to 90 at this point, but still, you can charge your laptop with this full charge and then still power things like your smartphone, your wearable, or another accessory through it. So for those who travel, this is a really, really cool thing to have. I'm actually pretty excited about it. If you have a gaming laptop, you can still charge the laptop, especially if it's got the lid closed. But understand, obviously, if you have a big GPU in there, like a Razer Blade 14 or Razer Blade 15, this will only output 100 watts. You're usually going to draw at least 130, sometimes 230 watts. So you would not be able to actively charge if you're using that GPU and CPU at its max, right? So just keep that in mind. But it's not cheap, $180 for this little guy, which is, that's a lot of money for a portable charger. But Razer is never known to be super affordable, but they do make high quality stuff. And this thing is a solid sucker. And then finally, I'll talk about, see if I can get it here. Also, if you're watching the podcast, this is the Galaxy Book Go. And this is a metal chassis on top, plastic on the bottom. It's $350 laptop, Wi-Fi only. There will be a LTE and 5G version later this summer. No Windows Hello at $350, but it's a 14-inch laptop with a full HD display and actually a pretty good web camera too. The display is okay. It's TFT. That's a lower end versus a IPS LCD. But it gets the job done. It's a screen. Really nice keyboard, precision trackpad, really just nice build quality on it, especially for $350. So that's using the Qualcomm 7C Gen 2, which we haven't benchmarked or seen yet. I will be reviewing this pretty quickly. There's not a lot to it, of course. The performance is okay. I can tell you right now, it's faster than the first Surface Go with a Pentium processor. In terms of running apps natively, it's actually significantly faster than that. But it's also not incredibly fast either. But it's not bad. But if you need a device for web, email, Outlook, Microsoft Office, messaging, Slack or Telegram or something like that, Skype, basically the inbox apps and, that kind of stuff. This thing is going to get a really good battery life. I haven't measured that obviously yet, but this probably will get easily 10 hours, I imagine. And it's pretty fast performance, all that kind of stuff. And for $350 with that Samsung hardware quality, it's pretty solid, A laptop Go, I think, is still nicer, but a laptop Go is also going to be, what, $499, I think it is? Or is that what the price is?
$549 for the starting one, and that's the one without the fingerprint reader and stuff. So,
yeah. So like, that matters, right? That extra $200, right? That's a $200 difference. I would say that $200 goes a long way with Surface Laptop Go, because
that's true.
The laptop Go's display is really nice. That's what you're always going to get in a Surface. It's a really, really good display. That's probably where that extra $200 goes. Also, the processor's a little bit better too, but yeah, cool device and stuff like that. So nice to see that happening. So I think that's kind of it for new hardware that I got in this week, surprisingly. And I didn't get to review anything this week because of Windows 11. But
we've had our hands tied this week. We should probably I think we said it last week, but we'll say it again. We are planning to do the podcast live on Thursday next week after the event. We're not too sure on the time yet. But we will obviously let you know on Twitter. But it will be on the Thursday in the afternoon, Eastern time. But obviously we'll have to do some articles and we've got other things going on as well. So we'll like I said, we'll let you know on Twitter when we do go live before Thursday. Hopefully, we just need to figure it out together. In addition to that, do you have a thing of the week?
Oh my God, no.
I do. I have one this week.
Oh, great. Because, I don't know where my week went this week.
Yeah, so I have a thing of the week this week. So it's a. Show, which I don't know. I think it must have came out in 2018. I think they've got two seasons. Sorry, what?
You didn't switch me back.
Yeah, I didn't switch you back. That's right. There we are. Here I am. I have a thing of the week, a TV show that I came across. I don't think it's a new TV show. I think they've got 2 or 3 seasons out. It's called Manifest. I don't know if it's on HBO. It's on Now TV in the UK. And it's a TV show about a group of people who were on a plane. That was on a flight back from some location.
That just got cancelled.
Did it really? Oh no! I've just started watching it.
I think it did 3 seasons. The 3rd season just aired.
There's still some TV to watch.
That's the airplane one, like where they disappear or something.
Yeah.
Like
so
that.
What happens is the synopsis is they're on a flight. They take off from one location. They land 5 hours later in another location. But where they land, it hasn't been 5 hours. It's been like 5 years. So they were deemed missing / dead, and their families have moved on and whatever else. Like some people who were married have been remarried at this point. And for the people on the plane, it's only been 5 hours, and their whole lives have suddenly been changed. It's an interesting idea, but it's a shame to hear it just got cancelled. Hopefully, there's still a complete story in those 3 seasons.
Right. Sorry, it's 2 seasons. The second season just wrapped. The good news is there are a lot of fans of this show, and it was pretty well reviewed. Not great reviews, but
it's not amazing, but it's not bad either. Like, I'm watching it. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not like a 5-star show, but it's not like crap either.
The first 2 seasons of the Missing Plane drama debuted on Netflix last Thursday and quickly climbed to the #1 spot in the U.S., which it's held for a week now. This is an article I'm reading on, who wrote this? Oh, Deadline Hollywood. Pretty good site, actually. I hear conversations between lead Manifest Studio, Warner Brothers TV, and Netflix are ongoing as the streamer is evaluating the viability and financials of a possible pickup. So there may be hope that it'll actually go to it's already on Netflix apparently streaming, but it may get actually picked up there. So
yeah, So yeah, that's my sort of thing of the week is that show Manifest. Well, we've also talked about this one before, but I'll re-mention it. Into the Night, which is on Netflix as well. I think it's Berlin. Like it's made in Berlin. It's directed by a studio in Berlin, so it is dubbed English, or you can listen to it in their language and have subtitles. But that is a season 2 of that's coming that they've confirmed, and that's a really good show. I enjoyed every single episode of that show.
Great. That is a great show. I do highly recommend. That's on Peacock, NBC streaming show channel here in the US.
Really? It's on Netflix in the UK. How weird.
Yeah, I didn't check what's on Netflix. I just know I watched it on NBC.
Right, yeah.
We also had that. I forgot the name of that show. It's another British show. It was probably like a single name. It was about the CCTV and the cameras, and they would live manipulate the feed and frame people.
I know what you're talking about. I know the show, but I don't know the name of it. I've seen those as well. It's like Detective Interrogation Room, right?
Right. And because it would
Criminal. It's called Criminal.
Is it just called Criminal?
I think it's just called Criminal. It might be called something different in different countries, but in the UK it's called Criminal. Let me double check that. Netflix Criminal.
Talk about this.
Yeah, it's called Criminal, unless we're talking about two different shows. It's Criminal UK, then there's Criminal US and Criminal France and Germany and stuff.
No, I think we're talking about something different.
Oh, okay. Well, that's another thing. Criminal. Watch that. It's great.
I'll try to think of the name of the one I'm talking about next time. Yeah, this is about like sort of the what do you call the deep fake technology? It's like a combo. They use like deep fake, but with the CCTV system in the UK, and it's like governments are basically setting up people, making it look like they've either committed a crime or killed someone.
Yeah, I've not heard of that one.
Yeah. Oh well, we'll figure that out. Are you watching War of the Worlds season 2? Did that start? Because I need to watch that if that started.
I'm not.
That was really cool. I love War of the Worlds. It's actually, and I'm talking about the original movie that goes back to the 50s. But I actually love the Steven Spielberg remake is like 90% absolutely amazing. It just has like 2 scenes that are terrible, which is the farm scene, and then also the very end. But overall, it's such a great movie though. Anywho, I don't have anything. I'm just going to take a long nap. Although we got a lot of busy stuff for us for next week, so we'll be doing that. But yeah, tune in next Thursday. Obviously, we'll be covering more Windows 11, and I assure you, what you've seen so far, and actually Microsoft tweeted this, it's just the tip of the iceberg. They weren't kidding about that. There's still a lot that to be shown with Windows 11. So make sure you tune in 11 a.m. Eastern time for that announcement. Of course, we'll do the live podcast following it. And I'm sure we'll have, I'm probably Zach's going to get a copy of it right away and have to do a video.
Oh, yeah. As soon as I can get my hands on it, I will.
Very cool. So anyway, that does it for us. We will do some quick Q&A here with the audience. So if you're listening to this recorded, you don't get to hear that, but you can join us every Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time on youtube.com/Windows Central, where we'll be do this live, and you can join the chat and watch the video of it all. Of course, you can also join us on our Discord server. I haven't been on Discord at all this week. My apologies. I've just been exhausted doing everything else with the site. But you can join us on go to windowscentral.com/Discord. You get the link there to join our Discord channel, where we have discussions on Windows, Windows 11, Xbox, Surface. People share wallpapers, which is actually one of the most valuable rooms. If you need new
Oh, we should have mentioned real quick. There's new default wallpapers in Windows 11, and they're really nice. They're very abstract. The 24, yeah.
Did you show? Have we seen the keyboard, the on-screen keyboard?
No, I didn't in the video, but it's been in the builds before, so it's not technically new.
You can skin it, right?
Can you skin it in this build?
I don't know, but there are 8 wallpapers for the keyboard.
That's right, but you can't skin them yet. So they are planning to do that, but I don't think it's in this build. At least I wasn't able to get it working. But they are planning to allow you to skin the touch keyboard in Windows 11.
Another new feature.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, the new wallpapers are really nice. Like they're actually. Like I've got mine. I've got the dark version of the default one on my Surface Duo, and like it just works so well. It's like it just works on anything. And they're sort of abstract. They're like Apple Mac OS wallpapers, which I actually really prefer.
There's literally a Sun Valley one.
There's a few Sun in a Valley ones, which I thought was really cool. There's like wavy ones, like rainbow colored ones. There's obviously this sort of flower looking one. They're really nice. They really are.
Yep. So I'm sure those are. We actually have an article on the site with those. You can go get them. But yeah, join our Discord, and people share lots of cool wallpapers in one of the chats there. And also, there's another room that people show their current setups for PCs and all that. Which, if you need new ideas about how to set up your stuff, it's always kind of fun. So again, windowscentral.com/Discord for that. And of course, we'll be back next week. You can follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino. And follow Zach as ZACBOWDEN. We'll be sharing our continued thoughts about Windows 11 and more info there as well. As always, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone. That's like when you end the podcast and you're like, all right, bye.
Oh, yeah, you hang up the call, yeah. Hopefully we're back. Oh, we've probably lost loads of people there.
How do you think Windows 11's new tablet gestures compare to the iPads?
They're not. The iPad, I think, is still better, but it's a big improvement for Windows as a whole. It's much better than Windows 10 for sure. I think it might be on par with Windows 8, but not in all areas. I think Windows 8 still sort of takes the cake in regards to just because you could flip for apps and stuff with one of the gestures on Windows 8, and that was really fun. But that's not on Windows 11. I'll have to get used to saying Windows 11.
Zach suggested the Duo 2 would be more phone-like than Duo 1 earlier in the podcast. Could you clarify? I mean,
just in regards to stereotypical phone features for a flagship, like better processor, better cameras, NFC, faster charging, stuff, just phone stuff. But it's still going to be a dual-screen foldable phone. Like they're not getting rid of that.
Right. Basically, we said this before. Take all the hardware complaints of Duo version 1, fix them. That's basically version 2. So,
will the old control panel finally go away in Windows 11? There's no evidence that it will, but I think they are adding dark mode to it, so that's fun. How should we respond to the Linux and Mac OS enthusiasts who are hating on Windows 10 already? Just ignore them. Or, because someone tweeted earlier this week, like being jokey, like, here's the Windows 11 wallpaper on Mac OS. Windows 11, this is the new Windows 11. And I quote retweeted and said, this is offensive to Windows 11. Because the Mac OS UI is ugly. It's not ugly, but it's not as good as the Windows 11 one, in my opinion. But listen, everyone's going to have their camp and everyone's going to have what they prefer. And macOS users are never going to be swayed, even though the Windows 11 UI is very pretty.
So what I always do when I'm trolling, if I'm to reverse troll, if someone says that to me, I just share market share. Show them the market macOS, show the market share of Linux, which is absolutely hilarious, and go, enough said. Because that ain't going to change. I don't care if it has an M1 processor. You're not going to see macOS 50% of the market suddenly. It's not going to happen. Sorry.
Brad Sams today alluded to a possible Surface Laptop Pro or Surface Book with a folding hinge similar to the Duo. Have you heard of that? That is very possible. It's definitely something they prototyped. I don't know if it would ship this fall. I have heard that there will be a new Surface this fall, like a new Surface line or device. Like it won't be a refresh of an existing product line. And a laptop Pro would be perfect. That would fit that bill perfectly. And plus, we've talked about the Surface Book's design. The Surface Book's design is unique and it's beautiful, but at this point, it's limiting the actual power of what it can possibly do. They need to redesign it so they can put more powerful processors in there. And a laptop Pro, essentially a book that doesn't detach, so that they can have a thin screen with the actual good processor in the base with a 360-degree hinge would solve that. That could be a Surface Book 4. They could call it Surface Laptop Pro. Either one works. This will essentially be their new professional laptop line to compete with the MacBook Pro.
I'm also just saying I did write an article last year about stop trying to make the Surface Book 3 into something it's not.
Right, exactly.
What you really want is the Surface Laptop Pro.
Uh-huh.
Like the Surface Laptop Pro design would allow them to do more. I wonder if they mean by Pro, if it's just to be the 360 part, or would it also fall having a beefier processor / GPU. That'd be kind of interesting. But I can definitely see them doing that.
Will Windows 11 have dark mode in all legacy controls? I believe yes, at least most of them, like the file properties dialog, the run dialog, all of that's getting dark mode. It's just not there in the leaked build.
What are Microsoft's plans to compete with M1 and Apple in regards to optimization for Surface and Windows? What about Windows and ARM? Any investments there? Sure. I mean, we don't have anything specific to say there, but we are expecting 8CX Gen 3 / SQ3 to be a pretty big performance jump over SQ1. It's a different architecture. It's going to be technically a different chip from what we understand. It's going to be on the more modern, based on what the Snapdragon 888 is, versus I believe the current one is based on the Snapdragon 850. And so I can't put that into context exactly, although we did have some information that it's supposed to perform kind of like a 10th gen Core i7, which is not insignificant. I don't think it needs to catch up to the M1. They don't need to do that. But you're going to continue to see this evolve. Like I said, ARM is a journey. It's not a race for them. ARM is just currently an option. And we're seeing AMD and Intel already doing quite well. The 11th gen stuff is doing very well for everyone. And AMD, of course, is doing their thing, kind of catching up in some ways. So I don't think there'll be any major announcements around that stuff. But, well, listen, the thing is, Intel, AMD, Qualcomm, and Microsoft are not sitting still. Right. I know the M1 chip is great, but all these companies are moving very rapidly, putting a lot of investment in. Microsoft basically in a year and a half rewrote a new operating system, right? So there's this new momentum for the PC, and you're going to continue to see all these companies invest heavily in it. So you can't write that stuff off. And I still don't think saying, an M1 processor alone is enough to get people to switch to Mac. It'll help a little bit, but it's not going to be, you need more than that too.
Microsoft releases 2 major versions of Windows a year. Is Windows 11 essentially 21H2, or will there be 2 OS running in parallel this fall? Windows 10 21H2 and Windows 11 21H2. We believe it will be in parallel, so there will be a Windows 10 21H2 for those who don't want to upgrade to Windows 11. And then there will obviously be Windows 11 version, whatever they call it. I don't think they're going to use that same versioning. I think they're just going to call it Windows 11. Windows 11 Update 1 or something, I think. So yeah, there will be Windows 10 and Windows 11 in market side by side, and Windows 10 will be in support until 2025, in which at that point you'll be told to go to Windows 11, and if you don't, then you will not get any more security updates.
Does Windows 11 come with the big little threading optimizations from Intel? So put this into perspective. Intel's expected, I believe it's with the 12th gen, maybe the 13th. They're going to follow what Qualcomm does with big little architecture, which means you have a bunch of cores that are dedicated to your primary task at hand, and you have smaller cores that can handle background tasks that are more energy efficient. This versus the current system of just a bunch of cores that all just run at the same time or use the same power draw. So, I mean, we don't know specifically with Windows 11 that support, but I would find it very difficult to believe that it's not there, right? Intel and Microsoft worked very closely on this. Microsoft's very aware of Intel's architectural plans for its new chips, just like same with Qualcomm and AMD. And so that's going to be some of that stuff that I'm saying tune into June 24th and thereafter, where we learn more about Windows 11. I'm sure that stuff will be a part of it. Conversely, we are hearing the new ARM chip that will be in SQ3 and the ATX Gen 3. It's going to have the ability to run all the cores, all big cores, basically at the same time, which is where you're going to see part of its performance jump, which is kind of nice.
How does the feature experience pack fit into Windows 11? Is it parts of the shell that are now updated using the store? Essentially, yeah, although we don't know if it will be via the store or via Windows Update. But what the feature experience pack does is essentially allows Microsoft to undock parts of the UI so that it can be updated and serviced independently from the OS. So as of right now, in like the current versions of Windows 10, if Microsoft wanted to update a UI thing or add a new UI feature, they would have to update the entire build. With the feature experience packs and what they've done on Windows 11 is that they've essentially built all of the majority of the UX into the experience pack, which simply just sits on top of the OS. So if Microsoft needs to update it, they can service it independently via Windows Update or with the store. We don't know how they're going to do it, and that can be updated without having to update the rest of the operating system. So the platform doesn't change, but the UX can. And that's why I keep saying this build that leaked is near final from a platform perspective, but it's not near final from a UX perspective. The UX is still lagging behind because it has many more months of development to go, even though the platform's done.
Zach, do you think Windows 11 was planned and became real only when they realized Windows 10X was going to be killed off?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I believe that that's probably true. Actually, I don't know, because I did hear some things earlier in the year that I just sort of didn't pay attention to. So I've known about the new Windows, like that they're doing a new Windows marketing campaign. I assume at that point they knew. So I can't remember when the new Windows first sort of started floating around. Maybe I think they would have been in close proximity, because Windows 10X was supposed to be done in December, and they missed that deadline, and so they kept rolling builds into February. I guess as a last-ditch effort to try and finalize it before they just pulled the plug entirely. So by mid-February it was done, and they weren't shipping it, and they knew that. So I assume maybe they decided Windows 11 January. Maybe it's been from the beginning. I don't know. Maybe they just kept that a really good secret.
Yeah, it's really interesting because they had been at some point where they decided to kill 10X. Yeah. We don't really know. We don't really know if they killed 10X and then said, screw it, let's just put it all into Windows 11, or if that happened around the same time, or they were always planning on Windows 11 and they're like, well, why are we doing all this with Windows 11? We can make this just work. Let's just get rid of the 10X. It's going to be interesting. We'll find that story out eventually, but yeah, I don't know. They surprisingly though, they used their pandemic time pretty efficiently. That's all we know.
Well, I think it's just timing really, because panels took over in February before the pandemic. I feel like even if there wasn't a pandemic, this still would have happened. I feel like
but that provides a huge challenge.
That's true. That's true.
Pandemic, everybody go home. We're working from home for the next year. By the way,
we're doing the biggest update to Windows in 10 years.
Yeah, that's pretty kind of hard, I would imagine.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's like that story, I think, is going to be really interesting when it comes out about how that came to be, because at that, and what the pandemic kind of did was, and Nadella has talked about this, is it accelerated the digital adoption, right? This idea that what was already happening, this idea of things moving to the cloud and computers becoming more important, distributed processing and ambient computing and all this, it was already happening. It was going down, Internet of Things, all that stuff was already happening. But the pandemic accelerated to a point that no one could have predicted. And we saw that with, adoption of laptops again and PCs becoming more important. All of a sudden, web cameras are important. Right. This is one area that like every company, including Microsoft, basically abandoned. And it was just Logitech was there. And now, we've seen Razer come in with a new camera. I just reviewed another new web camera, and I can tell you there's another web camera coming out real soon. In the next 2 weeks, it's going to be announced. That blows everything away. It's going to be the web camera Zach's going to buy 100%. I absolutely know it. So but we're seeing this innovation, right? And all this adoption of new technologies becomes so much more important. So it's kind of funny that happened while at the same time this Windows 11 thing is kind of like either they reacted to that, which is incredible, or they were always planning that. It just was a massive coincidence that's worked out for them. So I don't know. This is all stuff I want to find out myself. So.
You mentioned that you expect a refreshed File Explorer. Would that be a UI refresh using WinUI 3, or is it, or would it be just another minor modification akin to the change from Windows 8 and 10? I'm not sure what exactly they're using in regards to language, but it's a modern. I've been told it's a modern UI, so I assume, but don't quote me on this. I assume it's based on WinUI 3. It's still the legacy File Explorer, however. They're not building a new File Explorer from the ground up. It's not a UWP File Explorer. It's still the legacy File Explorer, just with essentially a modern skin on top. Is Xbox getting Windows 11? The latest Skipper Azure, what do I call it? Alpha Skipperhead ring build is build 22,000. So yes, technically it's getting Windows 11, though you're not going to see the UI and stuff, obviously, and they won't call it Windows 11, but it will be based on the same code base that ships with Windows 11.
Dan, is that a Microsoft web camera you're referring to, or something else? Something else. They do have that new webcam, Microsoft. That was announced.
It's not a great one, though.
It's not that, but I'm just saying that we are expecting to get that in, and I will take a look. I still got to review the Surface Headphones 2 Plus. It's been, like I said, a busy week, but yeah, I'm not referring to that. This is like this is the ultimate webcam, as far as I can tell, in terms of paper, but in terms of features too and specs, it's just going to be like the webcam I've been waiting for. So I'm very excited about it.
Do you think Windows 11 will let users have the option of using the Windows 10 start menu with live tiles and all? I don't know. So in the leaks build, you can. It's a registry edit that you can enable. Although, and in previous builds, there was an actual toggle in the settings app, like an end user toggle that you could switch. However, I've asked around since then, and the new settings app, which you've not seen yet, doesn't have that toggle. They could still add it, of course. There's still plenty of time between now and whenever the thing ships in the fall. But as of right now, I don't know if it'll be an actual end user thing. It might be an enterprise thing that can be configured via group policy. But I don't think end users just like people at home will be able to do it. I don't, unless you want to go in the registry and manually turn it on yourself, because it is still there, and I don't think they're planning to pull it out, not yet at least. Is Surface Neo going to be a Windows 11 device? We don't know, but I think it makes sense, and we hope it will.
Oh yeah, someone's asking an ironic question because Zach knows this. People were complaining that the X1 Fold by Lenovo, part of the reason why it kind of wasn't great, and it's true, I didn't even do a review on it because I just wasn't great, was because of the operating system. It was Windows 10, and it just was kind of clunky. Does it feel better with Windows 11? I did put Windows 11 on it, so I am going to do like a follow-up article maybe next week on it, but honestly, we're kind of busy. My impressions are so far it's okay, but I haven't noticed it didn't dramatically change my impressions of the hardware, which is it's still a thick device to hold and a little bit heavy to, use as a book. I think it's a little bit better. I honestly need some more time to play with it, but look forward to that article. I'll try to do something on that because I actually did put Windows 11. That was one of the first questions I had too. So.
Someone was asking, I've lost the question now. Will all of the inbox apps be updated with Windows 11? I don't have a complete list. I know a fair few of them will. I don't know if it's all of them.
So release date is 24 June. No,
that's just the event.
That's the event and announcement date, and we're very confident they'll announce a public preview.
Well, I wouldn't say very confident. We don't know, and
no, I'm saying they're going to announce a public preview was coming.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's probably more like Microsoft. Guess what? You can have all of this stuff next week.
yeah, that's realistically what I would suspect. But they were definitely going to announce a public preview this summer. If you want Windows 11 on your PC this summer, officially, it's going to happen. You will have that wish come true. If you want to wait till the production finalized version, you'll have to wait till October. Yeah. That. But that's what I'm saying. Don't go find the ISO. Don't risk it. It's just wait. Just wait till June 24th. They'll give you guidance. Wait for that version. You'll be able to make a better informed decision without risking security.
Hey guys, great work as ever. Any improvements to pen input? Maybe something like iPad Scribble. Yes, we didn't even mention it. There's a brand new pen workspace UI, and it's now completely configurable. You can pin any app you want to it. You can pin, say, OneNote or Sticky Notes or Paint, and you tap the button on the pen, the little menu pops up, you click on the app you want, you start writing, and it's super cool. Way better than the current Inks workspace, which is basically useless unless you use Whiteboard.
Yeah, all that stuff is I'm really excited about Touch, the keyboard, the new Touch keyboard.
Yeah, that's nice.
That works. The pen stuff. All of this is going to. It's also presumably you have to read a little bit between the lines. At Microsoft, some of the stuff they're prioritizing in Windows 11 and really doubling down on is going to be used in future hardware designs, right? Obviously, Panos now he's in charge of the operating system as well as the hardware. So he has to be thinking of optimizing those two things to come together, much like what Apple does. So I think you can read between the lines of where you're starting to see them really put their efforts in. That's like mobility, thinness, it reflecting more of your phone, it interacting better with your phone. Uh, all of these things I think are going to be crucial, um, leadership positions that Microsoft wants to take with Windows going forward. You also see with gaming, right? We said that during the podcast. We don't know any of the gaming stuff for Windows 11, but we're confident that there is a gaming story to it, including optimizations and streaming and, how it's going to work. And so, yeah, I think, or xCloud built into it, right? So I think there's a lot that needs to be talked about, but yeah.
Lots and lots of people asking about Project Latte. We have no real updates for you about that, unfortunately. We don't know if it will be at this event. I don't think so. When I heard about Latte, I was told it would go into preview later in 2021, so it would ship likely in 2022. So maybe they will announce it at this event. However, I don't think it makes sense to do so.
Can you explain it to people what Project Latte is?
Project Latte is Microsoft's internal effort to give Android apps to run Windows. I don't really know how it works. I don't know if it's using WSL. I assume it's using WSL. And I know they've been talking to Google about it as well, and I think Samsung. But again, I don't know where I don't know where this is internally. If it's imminent, I don't know. I haven't checked up on it really in a while. But yeah, I don't think it makes sense to announce that at this event because this event's about Windows. I feel like Android apps on Windows can be later, especially if it's only going into preview this year, they can probably just announce that later in the year. It doesn't have to be an event like a blog post or like an insider build or something, but we'll see. Because again, like the use case for this for me is still weird. Like I don't know who's asking for this.
Right.
So because it could just be they may be working on it. It may never ship. It might just be one of those things that they work on and just test and see if it's possible, and it never launches. So we'll have to wait and see.
I could see them talking about it when they talk about the store. I could see the
yeah, it's true because a lot of people keep asking me, will Latte be part of the new store? And again, I don't know. But I think the thinking is that the point of it will be that developers can submit their Android apps into the Microsoft Store and have them be discoverable there. So yeah, technically it will be part of this new store, though I don't know if it'll be there on day one / announced on day one.
Interesting. Is the system tray going to remain there, ruining the symmetry of the new taskbar?
So there is the system tray is still there, but it's new. Like the one in the Elite build isn't the one that will be part of Windows 11. There is a newer, modern version. It takes up less space, although you can still sort of, put your own icons down there if you really want to. But they are sort of trying to condense it as much as they can, so it looks more centered. But there will still be that offhang where the system tray is sort of obviously jutted out a little bit, and therefore the center taskbar, it's closer to the system tray than it is to the nothing on the other side. They need to find something to put in the other end of the taskbar now. They should put the news and interest weather widget there. Because I think that makes total sense if they did that, but we'll see.
Neo would be used with Neo would be used with Android apps. No, I mean Neo is still gonna be a Windows device.
Yeah, it's still shipping Windows. I think he's saying maybe it'll be more useful if it has tablet apps built for Android. But the problem with Android is that it doesn't really have any tablet apps. It has phone apps that are blown up onto big screens, and it's terrible. But yeah, I'm sure technically, tablets would, I guess, benefit from it, but. It still depends on developers submitting their own Android apps. This won't just mean every app ever is available on Windows as an Android app. I still think developers have to submit their own apps. I could be wrong about that, but I'd be surprised if I'm wrong about that.
That is the question, right? Because there's no Google Play Store. We're not expecting that to run. Right. You can install that. So, and then, what's the deal with Google? They're going to submit their apps because you can make a strong argument that some of the most useful apps would be Google Android apps. On the other hand, are they? Because all of Google's services run on the web and are PWAs. So you can go install a PWA of YouTube or YouTube TV or Google Maps or Google Photos right now on any PC in the world that runs Windows 10 and Edge, and you would have a Google app that functions perfectly. Google Maps will even work with GPS and LTE. It's
I
brilliant.
tell
So
you,
like,
it would be crazy if this Project Latte thing did end up being essentially the Play Store on Windows. Like it could, because I did hear they were talking to Google about something. I don't know what they were talking about. Maybe they were having conversations about, hey, can we put the Play Store on Windows?
I doubt that. I'm pretty positive that would never happen because I feel like they would need to then basically amend the contracts with all of the developers who have apps. And maybe they could do that, but like that's not a
Mm.
trivial thing because now it's like, oh, we're going to distribute apps. You're
And
distributing
also, yeah,
on this platform.
what's the benefit to Google? That's like,
Right. It
yeah,
doesn't,
it doesn't help
I
Google
mean,
in any way.
I guess, well, technically, if it's a separate Play Store,
Yeah, like Play Store PC or something. Yeah.
well, they can get the revenue from you buying apps. I just don't see the value of the apps themselves.
Yeah, right. Android apps are terrible.
Like I still have yet to see someone explain to me what app you would need to run on a PC from Android that would make sense. Like what, Instagram? You can run Instagram as a PWA. Like I just don't know, what, TikToks? I don't know. It's weird. Like you can even do that through the web. So it seems strange to me.
Chrome OS has had Android apps for years, and they're a jarring UX. Yeah, I agree. Like nobody says Android apps on Chrome OS are good because they're not. It's very much a tacked-on experience. It definitely doesn't feel as good as native web apps on Chrome OS. And that would be, I assume that would be the same on Windows.
And it's the same with Mac OS with the M1. It runs iOS apps. Big
Yeah.
whoop. When is the last time you saw someone talking about that or bragging about it? Because it's not great. It just isn't. Those apps are built for touch. And also on a Mac, you don't have a touch screen. You got to use a mouse and keyboard. And they weren't built for that. And it's very awkward to run some of those apps. I mean, I don't know. I find this weird.
It might have been something to do with developing Android apps on Windows using Android Studio or something like an inbuilt WSL type emulation. That's what I thought at first until I came across some documentation that specifically said, I can't remember now. Let me see if I can find what it said. Give me a sec. Let's see. It like with a quote, I could find the most popular Android apps in the Microsoft Store and run them on my Windows device. So that's kind of clearly where they were thinking at the time what Latte would end up being, essentially just running Android apps on Windows as an end user. But who knows? Like I said, this may not ship. This was a thing that they were thinking about and working on internally. Hasn't been announced, and it might never ship. It might just be one of those experiments that just doesn't, reach the outside walls of Microsoft.
Will Duo 2 specs features compete with the latest Galaxy iPhone specs? I mean, you got to leave some room here for the fact that the Duo's hardware design is incredibly different from those phones, being that specifically it's half the dimensions in terms of thickness.
Yeah.
So say that it's exactly the same? No. Are they going to be high end? Yes.
I mean, look, it will be a Snapdragon 888. It will be probably 8 gigs of RAM. It will be a camera system with a camera bump, so they're going to have bigger sensors and stuff. It's going to be essentially like a flagship phone, like for 2021. I don't know when Qualcomm announces its new chips for the phones, but I feel like the Snapdragon 888 will still be the latest processor by the time Duo is announced. Do you see any Surface wearables coming in 2021? I don't, actually. There's still no ecosystem for it. There's still no service or
Yeah.
I just don't think Microsoft can do it. I mean, they could do it, but
great with Duo, but there's not enough market share with Duo to.
Yeah, Duo is way too niche. Is Windows 11 made with ARM in mind? It's made with ARM in mind just as much as it's made with Intel and AMD in mind. It's still it's the same. It's the same as what Windows 10 is doing. So it's available on ARM and x86 and 64. How will the 360-degree flip work with a camera bump? That's a great question. And the answer is I don't know. Essentially, the stuff that's been described to me doesn't really work in my head. The Andromeda prototypes had a divot, so when you close it, the camera bump would go into a small gap in the design. I don't know if they can do that with the Duo 2 for reasons that you will eventually see. But yeah, I don't know. The answer to that is I don't know. Well, that said, if you use the Duo bumper, you're already sort of using it with a slight, I guess, angle anyway, because the bumper has that bit at the back that raises
Right.
it. So, is sets a feature in Windows 11? It is not.
Mhm.
At least not to my knowledge. Maybe that's one of the surprises that I haven't heard about, but I don't think sets are in there. When is Surface Book 4 out, and will it have an entirely new design? Well, we sort of briefly mentioned that earlier. The rumor is Microsoft is planning to ship a sort of new Surface form factor, possibly as soon as this fall, which will essentially be a Surface Laptop Pro with a 360-degree hinge. So essentially a book and a laptop. And the question is, will this replace the book, or will the Surface Book continue to exist? And the answer is we don't know. I would bet that this thing, whatever they call it, they could call it Book 4. We don't know what they'll call it. Whatever this new laptop is, that will replace the book line. So technically, yes, I guess a redesign, but also no, because it's technically a new form factor, because it's not a detachable anymore. But we'll see. Like I said, this might not even happen. It might not even be this year. It's just these are whispers on the rumor mill. All right, a few more questions, and I think it's time to head off. What's the Windows SE about? Oh, that's a good question. We should have talked about that as well. So in the leaked build, there's a new SKU called SE. We don't know what it is. So far, what we've figured out, as those people have installed it and poked around inside, it disables the Microsoft Store and a whole bunch of customization settings in the Settings app, and it also, I believe, it requires a Microsoft account when you sign in. So there's one of a few things this could be. One, it's essentially a continuation, it's some addition of Windows for businesses / enterprises that's locked down and only runs specific applications that an administrator or the user has installed in it, because the store is blocked, but you can still install external .exes and stuff from the web. Or it's a version of Windows designed for streaming. It would make sense if a version of Windows designed for streaming, you wouldn't need those customization features, because usually you would just have the app plonked onto your local desktop. So the addition just needs to get rid of all the excess baggage around it. But we don't know. These are just essentially guesses. Cloud PC is coming. I'm leaning more towards it's a version of Windows for Cloud PC, but we will see. What year do you think we'll get a consumer Surface HoloLens? I don't know if we will.
No, I mean, I get what both of you mean. Zach's right in a sense. I don't think HoloLens as the branding is ever going to be a consumer device. It's always going to be that professional,
that's what I mean,
surprise level device. Will they do a consumer version offshoot of augmented reality type glasses? Yes, I believe they will. Absolutely. I mean, they did Windows 10 as AR VR, right? I don't think 2025. I don't know. Maybe earlier. Maybe, I don't know, 2023. I'm sure we'll hear more about it. I don't think it's going to make a jump. In other words, I don't think 2025 will be nothing between now and then. I think you're going to start to see more talk about it. They probably have, I can see it as a separate event. It'd be interesting they talk about that at this event. But I can see that as a separate event. Maybe 2023 they announce something. But, right now it's really trying to get that hardware down till it's light enough and thin enough and not cumbersome. They're getting there. That's a company North that Google bought was doing some cool stuff. But you got to get the sensors, and there's a lot of invention of hardware that needs to happen first before I think it's a viable consumer product. But they're working their best to build out the infrastructure for it in terms of software and the to make it all happen for the apps and everything like that, so that when it does happen with the hardware, they're already there, right? So I think we're a couple of years away.
Do we suspect updates to the Neo hardware after the delays and cancellation of 10X? This is a good question. So you got, when Neo was announced, it was obviously announced in a pair alongside Duo, and their designs were the same. We know that Duo 2 is coming this fall, and there are some design changes to it. Not huge, but there are some notable design changes. If Microsoft were to launch the Neo this year as well, would they want to update to match the changes that they've made on the Duo 2? I would guess yes. So the answer to that is my guess, because I don't know, because I've not heard anything about the Neo's hardware since, for a while. Will they update it? I think based on how they announced it originally and what's coming with Duo 2, if they were to ship it this fall, I think it would make sense for them to follow the small design changes that they made on Duo 2. Because otherwise it would be really weird, right, if they announced Duo 2 with whatever it has that's new, and then they've got just a bigger version of the Duo 1 also being launched at the same time. It would be I think it'd be a bit weird.
As long as it has a big field of view, otherwise it would be disappointing. I mean, they have patents. They've invented basically a new limitless field of view technology, and we've done an article about that. So that's a huge area that they're investing in terms of field of view. But that's the stuff I'm talking about. It's whatever comes out like in 2023 or whatever, it's going to be leaps and bounds better than what we have today. So. Will the new Surface have a better processor than the M1? No, I don't think so. I don't think it needs to be. I think you all need to realize there's a reason why there are Core i3, i5, i7, Pentium. There's a reason why there's different levels of processors. They all don't need to be a Core i9. That said, these companies are all working towards that. Apple's not magic here, right? They did a 5-nanometer ARM chip, and they have really good software optimization that's going on. That's all they did. Other companies are hitting 5-nanometer too, and we're going to be hitting, 3 nanometers, I think, the next couple of years. So I think, again, you're all focusing too heavily on the importance of processors. Thoughts on Satya Nadella becoming chairman? Nope, I don't have any thoughts. I don't know.
I don't even know what it means.
I'm a big corporate structure kind of person.
Couldn't care less.
The least I could say is it validates him as CEO.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think it was
what
funny.
What does it mean? He sits down more? I don't understand. What's the chairman?
It's funny, though, if you consider some of our core audience around 2015, 16, people wanted him fired.
I know. I mean, there's still people in our comments who want him fired.
Yeah, just hilarious. He's going to... those are the same people saying our site was going to be closed and shut down, and we're going to lose all this traffic. And it's like...
So you guys did the rebrand to Windows Central just at the right time.
Funny that.
All right, a couple more questions, then we should head off because I'm getting tired.
Did Microsoft ever get rid of old apps like Windows Media Player? I forgot if Windows Media... Here's what I can tell you. 64-bit apps are their future, not 32-bit ones.
Oh, I don't... well, the legacy apps are 64-bit as well.
I was going to say, so I don't know if that was a 64-bit app. That's the only thing I can say. If it is, then it'll work.
You can remove them. So I don't know if... I think what you're asking is, will they be pulled out of the OS by default? I don't know. But you can remove them. If you go into the Turn Windows Features On and Off window, you can actually uninstall Windows Media Player and Internet Explorer and Notepad. And I believe you can uninstall Paint as well. You can uninstall all of them. Windows Fax and Scan, it can all be removed if you want to.
Media Player still in the operating system?
Oh, yeah. Media Player's still there.
As we all type. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Oh, I opened Adobe Encoder. That's not what I wanted.
Yeah, you can right-click and install it right now. So
yeah, you can uninstall it. And to be
they
fair,
probably did a lot of that stuff. I'm sure they did from Windows 11. I don't know. I got to check, I guess.
Oh, look at Windows Media Player with the rounded corners on Windows 11. Of that arrow-designed play and pause button.
Do you expect Neo to remain x86 or will Microsoft switch to ARM? I don't. They're going to stay with Intel. I keep saying this. They don't just swap out processors. It's not trivial. Yeah, the entire motherboard and wiring and all that is built around it being an x86 Intel chip. You don't just pop out the chip and drop in a ARM and go, hey, it's the same thing, but now it's better. I see zero reason why they would want to redesign the entire structure, internal structure of this device just to go to ARM when you can make a strong argument. I would make the strong argument Intel is catching up to ARM already. You know what? I probably want to do an article on this at some point because I'm a big proponent of ARM. Everybody should know that here. But I'm telling you, the Intel 11th gen stuff is sort of neutered a lot of the advantages of ARM. Like the way when my Intel 11th gen laptops go into hibernate, and ARM devices also go into hibernate, the Intel one will always resume faster than ARM. You know, that's not something you're going to see all the time. That's if you don't use your laptop for like a day or something. But it's absolutely the case. The Intel version can just resume faster. And it's getting a lot of advantages that, you know, even battery life is going a lot further. And for me, the difference is the big advantages of ARM right now is you can kind of do new hardware that you kind of can't do with ARM or with Intel. But even that is disappearing. If you look at the ThinkPad titanium, you know, how thin that thing is. So I don't see a reason why they would want to swap it out at all.
Do you think the new Windows 11 logo looking just like the Microsoft logo is of any relevance? I don't think so. I think it's just Microsoft aligning their branding across Windows, Surface, and productivity. Because, you know, they've done the same thing with Office. The Office logo is now essentially just the Microsoft logo. Yeah, I just think it's just aligning the branding across all of their sort of top end user products. It is. We should have mentioned that as well. Yeah, the start button is now the Microsoft logo. It's an animated version of the Microsoft logo, but it looks cool. But yeah, the new Windows logo is just the Microsoft squares, but just in blue. The Microsoft logo is the colors. The Windows logo is blue, and then the Surface logo is it's technically just white or black, in theory.
And I checked out that meme about how technically the Windows logo they've always had flat versions of the Windows logo.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not that different.
I think it's also just because giving it a new logo also just further propels the fact that it's new. That's all this name change is about. It's just trying to tell everyone as quickly as possible that this is a new version of Windows, because that's the most impactful way of selling a new version of Windows. You can't sell Windows 10 October 2021 update. It's unsellable. Nobody wants it.
Right.
Windows 11, you can fresh take on things. People have expectations reset. You know, it's a good fresh starting point for Windows.
Any news on Groove renaming, new app, all that? I wouldn't expect anything with Groove.
I would like them to just call it music or audio player. The fact that it's still branded Groove is like so lazy, because Groove was the service, not the music player. But I will. Yep.
And what about Photos app? Like, because that's, of all the apps, the Photos app I feel like needs the biggest overhaul.
Yeah, and I have heard Photos is in for a big design refresh with this update. I've not seen it personally, but that's what I have been told. Photos, File Explorer are the two big ones that people internally have sort of mentioned to me multiple times.
Do you think smaller Windows 10 or 11 tablets will come back?
Don't know.
Oh, I don't think so. It's a trick question in a way. I think the concept of an 8-inch Windows tablet probably dead. It doesn't mean OEMs can't experiment, right? We've seen OEMs do this before. There is the opportunity. I get what you're saying, because Windows 11 is more touch optimized, has better gestures, will have a better on-screen keyboard. So the potential's there. However, the reason I'm hesitant to say yes, or rather I want to hedge a bit, I think we would see dual screen or foldable tablets as the first dive into that. I feel like that's the way they want to go. This idea of like, here's a new type of hardware experience. And then, I've talked about this, how Intel has kind of really spearheaded this. And I can tell you that because Qualcomm is not on board really with the foldable dual screen stuff. I mean, we see it with Duo, but they're very much wait and see right now, saying, that stuff's kind of a few years out. And I think they're right. But Intel is really kind of leading that charge. That's what the X1 Fold is, and Neo and all that kind of stuff. I could see us getting smaller 8 or 10-inch tablets that are dual screen or foldables running Windows 11. And that's the push, because then that's really kind of new and different and separates itself from iPad, because that's what everybody's going to compare it to. It's like, oh, it's just like an iPad, but runs Windows, right? But if you do the dual screen folding thing running Windows, that's different, right? And that seems like a better angle. So I would bet on that versus a single screen 8-inch tablet. But there's nothing stopping an OEM from doing that as well. So maybe we'll see that. It's a good question. Are you guys aware of 3D modeling animation software that is native for ARM and ProHex? I mean,
I'm not.
What Adobe's doing, but yeah, not really.
All right, I think that's enough time to go. So yeah, we'll be back on Thursday for the podcast. We'll be obviously covering the event, all the announcements, and then we'll be taking your questions at the end of that as well. But until then, follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated on when we go live. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.